Welcome to the Zen Studies Podcast. Thanks, as usual, to new supporting members of the podcast who make my work possible. Cameron from Hansville, Washington, and Gina from right here in Portland, Oregon. So the title of this episode is Bright Clarity Appears Before You, Insight When You're Just Sitting. So when we sit Zazen, even if we're working with koans, we don't actively try to achieve insight. It's not like this, here's a goal and we're pressing to achieve the insight. But Chan and Zen masters throughout history have exhorted us to awaken to reality. So how does insight happen when you're just sitting? How do you awaken to what you've never seen before without getting caught up in concepts of enlightenment and delusion before and after? How do you lean into the unknown if you're trying to let go of any kind of doing at all? The 12th century Chan master Hongzhi, as you may know if you're a regular podcast listener, is one of my favorite teachers about Zazen, or what Chan calls silent illumination. And I did a 2-part episode going line by line through Hongzhi's famous poem Guidepost for Silent Illumination on the podcast. And there's a link to it in the show notes. But most relevant for today's discussion is the first line, and this translation is by Taigen Dan Layton. Quote, "Silent and serene, forgetting words, bright clarity appears before you." End quote. Silent and serene, forgetting words, bright clarity appears before you. In the spaciousness of Zazen, there's no separation between you and your insight. It's not a matter of I meditate, I settle the mind, and then I see some aspect of the truth, as if that truth were somehow separate from you or outside of you. Instead, in the spaciousness of Zazen, you are one with your experience, including everything, your memories and longings, efforts, fears, excitement, hopes, thoughts, loves, confusion. The truth of your life becomes clear as if a light comes on in a dark room. Turning on the light of your non-dual awareness does not in itself require the least willful mental effort, any more than discerning the temperature of water running across your hand does. When you feel the water, you just know it's cool or it's warm. You don't have to think, let me figure out what temperature this water is. You just know. So first of all, silent and serene forgetting words. In Zazen, we're letting go of any deliberate effort, any willful activity, including planning, figuring things out, fixing things, explaining, continuing to create and maintain our mental map of the world. And we, of course, naturally create this mental map because it allows us to categorize and predict things we encounter, helps us function efficiently in society, look out for ourselves. But in the space of Zazen, and at other times, but especially in the space of Zazen, we try to let go of this mental map. It's not reality itself. It can even be said that as we sit, we should let go of the distractions and fantasies that come up. And usually we think of these as kind of coming from the outside, or at least coming from some unruly and unhelpful part of ourselves. And therefore, we should kind of fight, push away, get rid of these things somehow. But if you look at it a different way, there's simply more willful activity. So our thoughts, whether random or focused, are subtle ways of trying to fix or escape the present moment. Maybe we feel a little bored or uncomfortable with ourselves. Maybe we don't really want to face what's going on in our lives. Maybe we fear the emptiness or meaninglessness we imagine might be lurking behind things. So our distractions and fantasies are also a kind of willful activity. Part of our mind decides, oh, let's go over here and think about this instead of just sitting. It's another way we try to make ourselves more comfortable in the moment. When we manage to let go of all of this, right? Like give ourselves permission to just give up all of this willful activity, then there is inward silence. I don't know about you, but I have an incredibly busy mind. So moments when there are no words in there, when there are no thoughts, doesn't happen very often. They don't happen very often. But occasionally, it's like, wow, it's just silent. And of course, in this practice, we are even letting go of trying to make our meditative experience any particular way. And that's what's so mind-boggling, so difficult to grasp about Zazen. Notice those times when you think, my meditation isn't going so well today. Built into that, of course, is an idea of how your meditation should be going. I shouldn't be thinking, I shouldn't be planning, I shouldn't be thinking about my grocery list, I should be whatever it is you've decided good meditation looks like. After all, we're talking about still spaciousness, so surely that's how good Zazen should be, right? But the practice is what we do. It isn't the result. When we say silent and serene, we're not saying you're only doing Zazen when you're silent and serene. You're doing Zazen when silence and serenity and stillness are your intention and your aspiration. When you respond with silence and serenity, no matter what ends up happening in your body and mind. The practice is noticing when you've gotten caught up in activity again and then just letting things be. The practice is the returning, the letting go repeatedly over and over. So silent and serene is what we do. We just let go of the chatter, we let go of the effort, we let go of analyzing our Zazen, we let go of all of that over and over and over. If we do this with an absolute minimum of agenda and no judgment whatsoever, the result is more stillness. For example, when I was sitting today, I found myself thinking about a website project I'm working on. And when I realized that was happening, I thought, well, that's not what I want to be doing during Zazen, right? So what is my response in that moment? For me, it helps to think of it as embracing what is happening. Sitting there thinking about my website project was simply what was going on. That was my reality in that moment. If I simply embrace it, I don't try to make it go away. I don't try to make something else happen. I just embrace it and include it. I shine the light of awareness on whatever is happening. Then there's a moment of serenity and stillness that has nothing to do with vanquishing a thought. The more completely, wholeheartedly, even foolishly I embrace whatever is happening, the longer stillness continues. Strangely, as soon as something is included, as soon as we shine the light of awareness on it, it's no longer a problem. There's this almost miraculous transformation from resistance to things as they are to profound peace with things as they are. We do this over and over and over. It's wonderful if we can convince ourselves to let go completely and allow that moment of stillness and silence to last longer than a moment or two. That's lovely. But we should remember that this is not a matter of mental skill or discipline. It's a matter of the heart, a matter of choice and trust, inviting ourselves to let go. I mean, that's not easy either, but it's difficult in a different way than most of the activities in our lives are. Any willful effort to fix our meditation generally only makes things worse. And there's a metaphor for this. We are holding a bowl of water and trying to let the water become so very still that all the silt sinks to the bottom and we can see through it. If there are ripples on the surface, it only makes things worse to pat the surface of the water and try to stop the ripples. All you can do is refrain from reacting and just sit still. Similarly, when thoughts and words agitate our Zazen, it doesn't help to think, oh no, what can I do to calm my mind? There's nothing you can do except hold still. All willful effort just agitates things more. But there is an effort we can make that isn't willful effort. I like to think of it as working with our heart's willingness to let go. And this kind of effort invites you to get creative and even compassionate with yourself. For example, one thing I do when I'm sitting and I find myself preoccupied with busyness and projects, worries, all kinds of things that are going on, I tell myself, all right, I have these 25 minutes or these 50 minutes that I'm dedicating to Zazen. There's absolutely no reason I need to think about my projects during this period of time. If I really do need to think about what's going on, I shouldn't be meditating. But unless there's a real emergency, I can set aside all my activities and responsibilities. Of course, my mind thinks, no way, we've got some really good stuff going on here. We need to keep thinking about this. But it isn't true. And I know from experience that if I give myself a mental and emotional break during Zazen, I'll be much better able to deal with things afterwards. So how do you encourage yourself to focus on meditation, to give yourself to the process? When you're meditating and find yourself busy with other things or distracted or resisting, what is something you do or tell yourself? Do you recite a verse, a vow? Do you call to mind something that helps you become more wholehearted? So then what about bright clarity appears before you? Maybe we only end up experiencing a few moments of silent illumination here and there. Maybe we've only experienced it once or a couple times. There is something about it we recognize. We recognize being silent and serene as our natural state, or as a state of being awake, or as a moment of clarity. Hongzhi says, inner illumination restores wonder. It's like suddenly hearing the call of a bird because we've become quiet, literally and mentally. Usually, even if we're physically silent, we're so caught up in our internal narrative, we don't notice much else. But when we choose internal silence as well, suddenly there's a moment of, oh, the clarity that manifests then isn't something new. It's not something we've achieved. It's not that we've managed to calm the mind and therefore can see through some kind of portal into another realm where the truth resides. Instead, it's realizing the clarity that was here all along. We were just so distracted and self-absorbed we didn't notice. The bright clarity we invite with our Zazen is both transcendent and not transcendent. It's transcendent in that it goes beyond our habitual, constrained, inward-turned, self-interested, worried, fearful, defended way of being. In comparison to the way we usually are, it can feel very special. But it's not transcendent in the sense of excluding anything or being better than anything. It doesn't transcend by leaving things behind. We don't pop out of our bodies and glide into the luminous ether. This bright clarity includes everything, our bodies, our limited, manifested selves, desires, hopes and fears, habits and quirks, our passions and righteousness, our attachments, opinions, physical impermanence, pain and sickness, old age and death, our fierce determination to live. If we perceive some bright clarity that seems to exclude all this human messiness, it's only a partial perception. And that's fine, we can appreciate it, but should remind ourselves that it's only partial. In a moment of silent illumination, we become aware of the state of things, especially the state of ourselves. It's just this moment, direct, silent awareness. A stray word may pop into our heads now and then, but we don't let it lead us astray. We don't need words for this. Words are our effort to weave an abstract understanding of things so we can maintain our mental map of the world, take care of ourselves. We don't actually need the discriminating mind to manifest our fundamental nature, and we don't need words to perceive the truth. Again, it's like hearing the call of a bird or feeling the temperature of water on your hand. One way to think about this whole scenario is a teaching I learned in a Buddhist context about the 3 nens, N-E-N-S, or levels of mind. The first level of mental activity or perception is very basic. For example, when you hear the call of a bird, at the first level, it's simply a vibration you're sensing, a phenomenon arising depending on sound waves and your ear and your brain. And the sound will have qualities like volume and pitch, but that's as far as it goes. The second nen is naming and categorizing. Ah, that's a bird call. Or perhaps that's a robin. The third nen is commentary. Oh, that's so beautiful. I'm so happy sitting here listening to a bird call. Or if it's not a bird call, maybe, oh, that's an annoying sound. Why has my neighbor started using his bandsaw while I'm listening to a Dharma talk? That's the commentary level. What we usually do is just spin around and around at that third level. We comment on a comment, then comment on that comment, and keep going. We rarely even dip back down to get fresh data from the first level. We tune out of our direct experience and get just caught up in our commentary. So using the framework of the three nens, our meditation, as well as our mindfulness as we go about the day, is trying to shift our awareness back into that first or second level of mental activity, where we're simply perceiving things. I mean, the naming part, the second nen, usually happens fairly quickly, and we don't have much control over it. And it's not really a problem. If a name pops in and we remain fairly aware and open, we're not being pulled into the repeating commentary. In moments of silent illumination, insight is occurring. Whether or not we end up with some conscious takeaway or lesson or conclusion. In that moment of silent illumination, we remember our basic nature in a very fundamental physical way. We remember that things don't depend on this executive I that we dream up. Things don't depend on us staying in our loop of commentary. Other things are going on. We breathe. We are present. We face ourselves. Sometimes, as bright clarity appears before us, we gain insights that are quite practical. If we're not excluding anything, then there we are, sitting with who we are and the way we manifest in this life. For example, recently I was sitting and noticed that the things distracting me the most, the things I was getting caught up in as I sat, were projects I care deeply about. And this care, this interest, comes from a sincere desire to make positive changes in the world. However, I recalled that once somebody had observed that or said that I was tightly wound. And I think that's a rather negative take, but I asked myself recently then, how does being tightly wound relate to my desire to have a positive impact on the world? And there's certainly a kind of tension and determination in my activities. Put positively, that's energy, right? When something is tightly wound, it has a lot of energy that can be released in activity. But what's the downside of being tightly wound? I asked myself this not in an abstract philosophical sense, but in a very personal one. What is the downside of my experience of being tightly wound? And the answers were right there, just like the knowing that cold or hot water. It can be exhausting. It can also result in a certain intensity that isn't always skillful. And this opened up a new avenue for me to explore. Is there a way to be very energetic and active and devoted without unnecessary tension? So this is the kind of personal insight that can occur in the space of silent illumination. It's not a matter of going and looking for something or analyzing something. It's simply that there we are with ourselves, and things reveal themselves. Insights can occur. And these insights aren't limited to our personal selves. not limited to our habits and quirks, our lives, our choices. It's the amazing thing. We are limited. We're individuals. We can't pop out of our bodies and become some omniscient godlike being. But we are reflections of the greater universe. We contain the greater universe, like the little jewels in Indra's net, an infinitely vast net with each jewel being at the junction points of all the strands. We reflect all the other beings, all the other strands, all the other jewels. We're not ultimately separate from anyone or anything, so a certain kind of insight into ourselves is also an insight into something bigger than ourselves. Insight into the reality beyond the scope of your individual life is exactly what Dogen's Genjo koan is all about. He explains that the entire moon, the whole of the Dharma, can be reflected in a drop of dew on a blade of grass. Your small individual body-mind. He also says that although a bird can never reach the end of the sky, and your own direct experience is inevitably limited, if you make this very place your own, your practice becomes the actualization of reality. Insight into your true nature, into Buddha nature, suchness, interdependence. All of this is right in front of us, waiting to be discovered when we're able to allow ourselves to become still and silent and open. That's it for today. I will be back as soon as I can with a new episode. I hope you'll tune in. Thanks for listening.